I often think I've forgotten more than what most people have seen. I've just been so fortunate. You know, I hear some kids sprouting off how good a fisherman they are some days, and I've got to tell them, look, mate, I've lost more big gummies at the bow roller than you're ever likely to see.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. I'm John Susman. Amidst the vast embrace of the ocean, where the horizon melds with the deep blues, there exists a life thoroughly entwined with the undulating rhythms of the sea. For some individuals, salt water flows through their lifeblood, sustaining and challenging them in equal measure. As a commercial fisherman along the remote and wild west coast of South Australia, Jeff Schmucker's days unfurl with the pre-dawn glow that glosses the water's surface. His trusty boat knows the moods of the Southern Ocean intimately, slicing through the waves to reach fishing grounds. Here, the waters churn with life and the Australian bite offers its rich harvest. The sea demands a balance of respect, taking enough to thrive but always conscious of the necessity to conserve. With hands sculpted by the pull of nets and the fight of the line, he engages in a daily ballet with the forces of nature, a rhythm set by weather, water and the elusive catch. It's a profession at the mercy of the elements, a dance with chance where every day holds the promise of providence or the risk of return with an empty fish tub. Yet it's not just the fisherman's line that casts deep into the heart of the ocean. As a big wave surfer, the same tumultuous waters become a stage for a different kind of pursuit. At the mercy of swells that have come vast distances, Jeff finds solace and exhilaration on the towering waves that crash with raw energy against the rugged west coast. To surf here is to take on the ocean's might, to ride the pulse of a planet in motion. For this fisherman and surfer, the sea is a source of livelihood and a canvas for courage, where each day spent on the west coast's wild waters is a testament to a life less ordinary. A life where water is the ever-flowing source of existence.
My name's Jeff Schmucker. I'm from Streaky Bay on the Eyre Peninsula of South Australia. When I was born, I have got this little phenomena, and my second and third toe are joined halfway down, and I was born with a set of flippers. I've been on the water all my life, from a kid, mate, just hanging out with the old man, fishing. I was taking days off school when I was 7 and 8, when I was only in year 3 and 4, to have to fill in a trip with the old man on a shark trip on a gillnet boat, on an old timber boat called the Carol J, fishing out of Streaky Bay back in early 70s. And I knew how to gut a shark. By the time I was 8 or 9, I could help Dad clean the catch on the way in. I was hooking bronzies off the back of the boat, before I reached double figures. So yeah, I started early. I had a passion. I think I knew by the time I was 8 or 9, I remember clearly, I knew that I was going to be a commercial fisherman. I went to boarding school in Adelaide, and I was the second person, apparently, to go to Ross Trevor College and go straight into the alternative class. The first person was a iconic fisherman on the Eyre Peninsula here by the name of Bernie Henderson, and I was right behind him. We went straight up to the agriculture shed and started working on tractors. Well, it was only the halfway through that year I left boarding school and came back to Streaky Bay and jumped on a boat called the Helen M from Esperance that was in Streaky, and we fished for tuna back across the bight at 15 and unloaded in 33 tonne in Esperance. And yeah, it was 3 months before my 16th birthday. It was a different tuna industry. Things were starting to wind down a little bit in the industry at that stage, even, I think. There was boats still like the Cape Byron around, old wooden tuna boats. We were obviously polling. I think the tuna markets, it was quite tight, and it wasn't much longer after that the farming, the ranching methods started to come into play. Yeah, I was of strong build, and and it was about technique, about getting large fish over the side as the boat rolled, and the poling tuna was it still is today, one of the most electrifying fishing methods that I've ever done for excitement and action and crazy sensation polling tuna.
Streaky Bay, nestled on the western coast of South Australia, boasts a dramatic coastline marked with pristine beaches and rugged cliffs. Its waters, peppered with islands and streaked by minerals and seaweed, give the bay its distinctive name. Renowned for its rich marine life, including the famous King George whiting, and framed by arid land that blooms with wildflowers, Streaky Bay offers a diverse tapestry of natural wonders where the outback meets the sea.
Streaky Bay is the centre of the Eyre Peninsula on the west coast geographically, but far out. What a coast, mate. To be born into something like this coastline, it's one of the most unique coastlines in the world, and everywhere's different. I've travelled a lot, but this place still fascinates me. We've got 6 estuaries or so on the west coast from and the Gulfs in the South Australia. It all just adds to this unique. We've got unique tides. We've only got the Gulf of Mexico and South Australia are the only 2 places in the world where you get a dodge tide, or where the tides have no movement on the quarters, the moon quarters each month. And it's quite fascinating, but it does a lot for different species. You can catch more species when the tide's slow and then the tide roars. So that's unique in itself, those big bodies of water. And we have all these estuaries along the coast in Venus Bay, Baird's Bay, Streaky Bay, Smoky Bay, and Sejoon and Murat Bay. And those estuaries have shallow water seagrasses, which are just, they're only found in a few areas of the world. And we've got our own unique varieties of seagrasses and all our unique marine scale species that inhabit these bays. The offshore fishing's something to behold as well in our reef systems, and we have a couple of the only oceanic prawn fisheries in the world, and our water temperatures change quite dramatically. Our air temperatures change, within 40, 50, 60 degrees air changes, and it's quite, the weather's changing all the time throughout the year. We really do get 4 seasons, and so to fish the coast and the different species, you really got to have that experience to follow and know where to go and where to look, and not spend all your time looking and a lot more time catching. And the industry came north to Streaky Bay for tuna at different times of the season, and when the boats came to Streaky back then, when a big blow had come through, there'd be anywhere up to 30 boats or 40 boats tied up side by side at the Streaky jetty. And as the weather subsided on a classic day, they'd be out baiting of a night out off the Streaky jetty, and you could see them off the town, 20 or 30 lights out there baiting, catching live bait. And then as soon as you had your bait, you would be racing to, Noites or Western Streaky, wherever the spotters were finding the fish, and you'd all be the boats would be racing to the fish and obviously chumming up the patch and first into the patch and getting the fish going, and everyone would scramble to the racks when you're coming to a rippler and start slapping the water or live baiting. And I just remembered it was crazy to be 15 or 16 years old and being part of that. For me, it was just a fantastic memory.
A young fisherman's journey into the craft begins with learning the ocean's rhythms and the silent language of the tides. It's an apprenticeship marked by working across as many different forms of hunting for fish as possible. Each day is a lesson in learning about preparation, patience and respect for the sea, an education in tradition and the sustainable harvest of its treasures.
Well, I was at footy training one night in Streaky on a cold winter's night, and a fox shooter shearer rocked up there, and he is a legendary fisherman in South Australia too. His name was Jim Hales. He was a cray fisherman down the southeast, and he came out for a run for footy training, and I said, Halesy, what's going on? And he said, I'm cray fishing down the southeast. I said, give me a job. And he rang me back a couple of months later. He said, hey, Schmuck, get down here. We're starting in 8 weeks. Come down and do the maintenance. I spent 2 years cray fishing in Beachport down the southeast in some of the roughest conditions I've ever fished in, small boats too, and leaving early, big days, strong tide, just hard physical work. And Jim was a diligent operator and taught me. I did a 2-year apprenticeship down there, and he taught me everything I know about motors and the boats and looking after gear and painting. And I did a solid apprenticeship with him, and I really appreciated it because it set me up to look after my gear and my own fishing operations. And that's where the rubber hits the road in fishing. If your gear is ready to go and it's in good condition, you're ready to fish when you got to fish. Unfortunately, in the second year of the second season down there with Jim, my father passed away fishing at Streaky. He was handlining King George whiting and passed away out whiting fishing one day. So I couldn't stay in the southeast any longer. I missed my family and come home at I was just 17 and a half, 18, and my mum transferred the family fishing licence to me, which I sold to a buyback, ironically, last year to the reform of the marine scale fishery. But I still have a marine scale licence today, and I entered the marine scale fishery then, handlining for King George whiting and a gill netting shark, and I spent the next 15 to 20 years gill netting shark and handlining and dabbing garfish and in a multi-species, multi-gear fishery and different boats. So I bought and sold boats, wooden, I had the last wooden boat on the west coast of South Australia, commercial shark fishing, and I really enjoyed having wooden boats because such a culture going on the slip and keeping your boat nice, and the capabilities of a wooden boat and just the warmth and the characteristics of a wooden fishing vessel was something to behold.
For a young fisherman, education extends beyond local shores to the remote and wild fisheries of places like Alaska, where the craft is tested against nature's extremes. Venturing into these icy, untamed waters offers a profound lesson in resilience, where one learns from seasoned veterans the nuances of different fisheries, different species, and a different life. It's an adventure where each catch is hard-won, embedding deep knowledge of sustainable practices essential for survival in the fishing industry.
The multi-gear, multi-species fisheries ebb and flow, and sometimes things get pretty tight or pretty slow, and I made the most of them opportunities front foot forward, and I went with another iconic guy from Port Lincoln, Craig Valenti, and he was longlining on the east coast of Australia, so I did a stint with Craig longlining out of Sydney and Port Stephens for tuna, and that was very interesting. And I met in those earlier years, in about 1999, I met a surfer from Puerto Rico, and he came to Australia and came to Streaky Bay, and he said, "Jeff, you got to go to Alaska. You would love it." And in the commercial salmon fishery there, and it wasn't until 10 years later I ventured to Alaska and fished in the drift net fishery in Bristol Bay for salmon, and met all the guys who are now on the Deadliest Catch. I met those guys service the salmon fishery throughout the summer, picking up fish from the small gill net boats and delivering them to the processing ships. And it was unreal up there. And I was back there in 2010 again for another season. I met a lot of lovely people and spent time from Vancouver Island down the Aleutian Island chain up into Bristol Bay, steaming boats back and forward and being part of that fishery. That was great. I believe it's the largest fishery in the world in volume of boats and people engaged in the fishery, and they have a boat limit of about 32 feet, which is quite crazy because the boats have morphed into these almost round little beasts, but yeah, they hold a lot of fish. And the gill net fishery is, it's by the gun. They shoot a flare or radio signal that you start the fishery, and then they close the fishery, so you have short windows of openings, and it's electric. And I just remember being on the North Line at Iggy one day, and there was fisheries choppers and vessels and boats shooting over the top of each other, and actually I saw a couple of boats hit each other, and it was unreal, just electrifying up there with pole and tuna back in the day. It was full on and quite exciting. The volumes of fish were epic. I mean, you'd hit the pillow of a night, mate. Your fingers were burning because you were pulling them out of the 8 braid gill net and burning your hands out. But I think we did 13 tonne of salmon one day, and all hand picked from the gill net. I've never seen that volume of fish just single-handedly handled each animal individually. Pretty crazy.
In South Australia, the life of a modern marine scale fisher intertwines with the Southern Ocean's temperamental moods. With sustainability at the forefront, they employ regulated practices, using nets and lines to selectively harvest species like snapper, garfish, southern calamari, and the mighty King George whiting. This challenging profession demands adaptability to regulations and markets, a strong grasp of marine biology, and a deep respect for the ocean's delicate ecosystems, ensuring their livelihood endures alongside healthy marine populations.
Yeah, life now's, I don't know, it just seems quite different, but the olden days are the olden days, and I guess these are the olden days too, but right now we seem to be we're in a marine scale fishery in South Australia that's been under reform for 5 or 6 years, and I've been an integral part of moving towards that in the management side from an industry representative side of it. And the fishery's gone quota like many other fisheries in the world, and it's been hard for some people exiting the fishery or trying to stay in because not many have catch history, and to qualify for these amounts of quota that you need to be sustainable, there's just lots of heartache in moving the management regime of a fishery. There's a lot more pain than there is gain. I mean, the gain's pretty flamboyant at times with people receiving large amounts of fish for work that they've put into the industry, I guess, and been lucky or had good runs of fish at the right time, and it's reflected back into a financial gain. But the pain is quite disturbing for our industry and the ageing demographic in the fishery. I think, the marine scale fishery, I love it. It's a multi-species fishery, so we're still targeting bronze whalers by long line. We have a small limit of gummy and school shark, which we can take by long line. We have a dab net garfish fishery and a jig fishery for southern calamari, a longline fishery for snapper, but unfortunately we're closed until 2026 for that. Fishery will be closed for 6 years at least through stock sustainability concerns. And the iconic King George whiting that we handline, which it's got to be the oldest method of fishing, using a piece of string and 2 hooks. Well, if you know how to use that piece of string and 2 hooks and you've got 30, 40 years experience in this industry, the money to be made is, we are in the fishery to make our living, but that's not, if you have a love and a passion for this fishery, you're not in it for the money. But the money for the King George whiting fishery is looking really good, and of my operation, we're sort of, freight is killing us to get fish out of a remote area because of fuel costs and, just rising costs. So I've set up a little factory, and I'm processing my own fish. I'm doing something new, relatively new for the commercial sector, is boneless King George whiting fillets. The factories have left the bones on for years to gain an extra 12 or 13% of weight, but I'm taking them off and selling a pristine product that the chefs don't have to touch. They can just cook it and lay it out, and it seems like it's going to be really lucrative. And by doing it yourself, you're cutting out that middleman. That we've been building mansions for them guys for a long time, and now it's time for us to start capitalising on, as we moving forward to try and make a sustainable operation for us.
On South Australia's west coast, a marine scale fisherman starts their day before sunrise, meticulously preparing gear with a keen eye on weather forecasts. Braving the capricious southern ocean requires a fearless attitude and profound respect for nature's might. Each day demands precise preparation, balancing safety with the pursuit of the day's catch amidst the region's notorious swells.
A typical day in the King George whiting fishery at the moment, we're coming to the end of it for this year, but it's a winter fishery, so you usually cold, you're rugged up and fishing pretty adverse conditions, up to 35 knots of wind, fishing in a 15-foot boat, but in shallow water, so it's blowing the top off the water, but it's pretty uncomfortable. It doesn't do anything for your back. A typical day is, up at daylight, pleating the bay in Streaky, pulling the razor fish, which are like a razor clam that sits in the sand, and we're allowed to take a limit of them, and we can use them for bait purposes only, and we crush them and use them throughout the day to attract the King George whiting to our patch. So the local burley is always the best. It doesn't matter where you're fishing in the world, the local burley is the best burley. And so fresh razor fish are on the ute and load up with ice and drive to one of the estuaries. It can be up to 160 kilometres a day in the car to travel to the estuaries. The Venus Bay or Baird's Bay or Sojourner, depends where the runner fish is. 7 or 8 or 10 hours of hand lining throughout an incoming tide and an outgoing tide, and an average to good catch is 50 or 60 kilograms of King George whiting a day, up to 300 or 400 fish, all hand line caught with one line with 2 hooks on it. anchoring with 3 anchors to get your boat right in the tide and in the wind and at the right times of day on the right little bits of reef. Or we're constantly moving, doing up to 20 or 30 patches a day at most. Yeah, pretty physical. So and it's just a nice environment to work.
Fishing and big wave surfing share a symbiotic relationship with the ocean's rhythm. For those who cast nets and those who ride swells, understanding the sea's patterns is vital. The fisherman's keen observation of currents and tides informs the surfer's search for the perfect wave. Both respect the ocean's power, nurturing a harmony with the elements, and both draw from the deep well of bravery, patience and respect that life on the high seas instills.
Well, I appreciate your question, because I'm sure people know that I've got that connection, but far out. To have a big wave surf connection and a fishing connection on this planet, it's pretty hard to maintain both. You've got to be passionate about both. And so my big wave connection's taken me all around the world. It started off with just surfing bigger and bigger waves and more exciting and more adrenaline, really. And 20 years ago, there were some guys in Hawaii started using the jet ski to tow into bigger waves, which made it more accessible. And unfortunately, at times you bite off more than you can chew, letting go of the rope on a swell that you can't really tell how big it is until it's going to hit the reef. But yeah, fortunately, I'm 56 and I'm still towing into 40-foot faces or 50-foot faces today. And one of my colleagues, one of the Huck fishermen from down here, said the other day, he said, how much longer are you going to be towing that shit for, Jeff? And I said, well, as long as I can still obtain triple figures, like over 100 kilo of whiting handlining a day, I'm going to keep towing waves as big as swells is what we're going to find. But it's been a great lifestyle too. It's a bit like fishing. It's taken us all around the world, to Tahiti. We surf Chopu with my son's quite a famous surfer as well, so I've enjoyed surfing with my son, and that's been pretty cool watching him. He's one of the best big wave riders in the world. I just think, I know that fishing is all about keeping your eyes open, looking outside the square, your perception of things, and I think, and surfing's very similar. It's you've got to be eyes wide open. You just watch and swim. It's about preparation. It's about passion and preparation, and then you apply your skill. But I think your skill comes with your passion and your preparation. Skill is something that grows and grows, and it's an absolute necessity in both fields. If you want to fish, you got to be passionate about it, and you got to grow with it and be acceptable of change.
South Australia's west coast is a dramatic theatre for the great white shark, an apex predator commanding respect and awe. These formidable creatures, with their steely gaze and fluid power, glide through the ocean depths near Streaky Bay, their presence a testament to the wild's raw beauty. They are a crucial part of the marine ecosystem, maintaining balance and inspiring both conservation efforts and a sense of wonder in the waters they dominate.
I'll recite one story as I was a kid, because it wasn't any of my doing. It was sitting in awe as a 8 or 9 year old kid with my father, and we were cleaning shark at Cape Bore at Streaky, and in the evening after a big 2 or 3 shots gill netting throughout the day, and had all the fish in the old wooden boat in the well. I was gaffing them out of the well, giving them to Dad, and he was cleaning the shark and throwing the heads over the side, and a 16 or 17 foot pointer. It was a huge one, turned up at the side of the boat. And I think back in the day, my father and even me as a younger fella, we didn't really think about what our connection with the environment and about sustainability and looking after things. And Dad's pulled out the power head and drove a 12 gauge shell fair between the eyes of this thing, and it just took the surface off the water as it took off. And I was just probably hanging onto the mast, just going far out. That's the most powerful thing I've ever seen or ever likely to see, and hence my fascination with great whites, and been in the gillnet fishery on the west coast for 35 years. I saw a lot of pointers and had a lot of interactions with them, dead and alive, caught in the gillnets and coming to the boat while we were cleaning fish. I was always a coastal waters fisherman too, so fishing around the sea line colonies. So if there was a boat that was going to see pointers, it was me, and I saw them around the surf breaks, and all along the coast. I've never seen a pointer in the surf until last week. We had a shark attack at Streaky Bay, and I saw that shark minutes after the attack, and I don't know, they're such a graceful creature. I've got a good respect for them. I hope moving forward we can work with the great whites and not have to knock any of them off. Maybe we can possibly get some GPS trackers in them and start a database where any kid can look at the website through an app while he's sitting in the car park and see that there's a pointer there, or there was a pointer there 2 days ago and it's moved on. As you can follow the track, and hopefully this government has enough money to spend on it to look after the water users in these southern states of Australia, and we can have a healthy respect for the pointers and reduce the amount of interactions. They're an animal that there's not very many of them, and I reckon, in my opinion, there might only be 200 or 300 great whites in South Australia right now that are over the length of 13 or 14 feet in that man-eater size. And I think what I've come to understand about them is they're just so unique. They're unique individuals, and they're them big fish are just like a king lion, like a big lion that's in charge of the pack. I'm not talking about his subordinates. They're such individuals and so strong characters, and they move with such confidence and prowess. And man, you just can't stop to think how amazing they are, how magnificent.
Many fishermen grapple with the isolation and physical demands of their trade, sometimes seeking solace in alcohol. However, there is a transformative journey that awaits beyond dependence. Embracing sobriety opens a rejuvenating chapter where the clarity replaces haze, allowing for fuller engagement with the ocean's wonders and a more profound appreciation of life's richness. The support of their communities can guide them towards healthier shores, where they find strength not in spirits, but in the spirit of the sea.
Along with my fascination of big waves and my fishing career came some addictions, and my addiction was alcohol, and I've been on a piss all my life, I've been pissed for 30 years, and I'm a functional alcoholic, and I don't mind sharing that now. But 3 years ago, I woke up and thought to myself, I can't control this thing. I'm just having a few beers every day, but I wasn't finishing off on things. I'd lost my self-satisfaction that you get from cutting the drawbar off a boat trailer and welding it back up and putting a new winch on and painting it. I lost that 15 years ago, and I was happy to pay $100 an hour to one of these marine fabricators. We got no disrespect to them guys. They got their businesses and they're building us boats and looking after our gear, but I'd lost my self-satisfaction, which was a real shame. And since stopping drinking, for me, I knew that it wasn't something that I could partake in anymore because I had that addictive personality, and I had to stop it altogether. But since then, I've put a 40 odd fruit tree orchard in the ground, and I'm processing my own fish, and I'm just starting to get back what's rightfully mine, and that is, being an ambassador for our fishery. Looking after what's happening in my own world first, in my family and in my own immediate world, and only then, if I'm healthy, I can go out and help and contribute to society and my community. Mate, that first breath in the morning today, just those first deep breaths and looking out and seeing the sun come up, mate, I was so happy to be alive and be awake and appreciating everything that's around me, that I'm getting out of bed now with a newfound enthusiasm that I haven't had since I was 9 years old with my old man when that powerhead went off.
Jeff Schmucker, both fisherman and big wave surfer, embodies the pure love and joy the ocean can bestow. His life, carved by the swell and the pull of the tide, reflects a profound connection to the sea. In the silent wait for a bite or the thunderous chase of a towering wave, Jeff finds a harmonious existence. His passion for the ocean's vastness, a mirror to the endless possibilities it presents to those who seek its embrace. This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast, or email us at fishtalespodcast at deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.